afternoon. This is chapter 4 of our book, Hero. Later that night, Ben took the dogs into the backyard to run them around before bedtime. He gently lobbed a ball across the lawn. Hero raced after it, but Scout was busy playing with a stick he had found in the grass. He gripped it between his teeth and waved it around in a big figure 8. Hero leaped up and snatched the ball out of the air. He carried it over to Scout. As Hero approached, Scout dropped the stick and wagged his tail. Hero deposited the ball at the puppy's feet and nudged it toward him with his nose. Scout picked it up and commenced chewing on it. "Aw, Hero," Ben said. "That was nice of you, pal. Bring me the ball, Scout." Scout looked at Ben but didn't move. "Come on, Scout, bring me the ball." Ben patted his thigh with his palm to summon the dog over. Confused, Scout dropped the ball on the grass. Hero instantly picked it up and carried it over to Ben. Then Hero looked back at Scout, as if to say, "See?" Ben took the ball, just like that. "Okay, Scout, let's try it again." Ben lofted the ball gently into the air toward Scout. Scout saw the airborne object heading toward him and startled. He leapt sideways as quickly as he could. "It's okay, Scout," Ben called out. "It's not going to hurt you." But Scout wasn't buying it. He crouched in the grass, his eyes locked on the ball as it landed on the ground a few feet away from him. Only after the ball came to a complete stop did Scout run over and tackle it. Ben's dad came outside to watch the dogs in action. "Do you think Scout's afraid of the ball because it's moving?" Ben asked his dad, "or because I threw it?" "Hard to say. Try it again," his dad replied. At the sound of the grown man's voice, Scout's head snapped up. The puppy eyed Ben's dad with suspicion. "What's wrong with him, Dad?" Ben asked. His voice tingled with worry. "He's so young," Ben's dad said, shaking his head. "If a big man made him fight bigger dogs," he trailed off, "that can imprint on a little pup like that forever. Safe bet the people who did that to him were men, like me. I really can't blame Scout for his less than trusting attitude." Hero nosed at Scout and gently tipped him over sideways, then commenced licking the puppy's fur. Ben couldn't imagine who would do that to such a young puppy, or to any dog, really. It made him sad to think about how scared and lonely Scout had already felt in his short life. First, he was treated terribly. Then he was all alone in the woods. No wonder he was so skittish. "Go on," Ben's dad said. "Throw the ball for him again." Ben took the ball from Scout. He walked back to his original spot and held the ball out in front of him. Scout followed it with his eyes. Very gently, Ben rolled the ball on the grass. As it approached Scout, he leaped to his feet and scooted backwards, a growl escaping his throat. The ball stopped, and Scout sniffed at it. He swatted at it with one paw. "He's just a really nervous pup," Ben's dad said. "What can I do to help him?" Ben asked. His dad exhaled slowly, thinking, "It's possible that with some good training in a safe environment, Scout would be less jumpy, and he might get more comfortable with people, especially men." "Really?" Ben asked excitedly. "Do you mean regular training like sit and stay and stuff? Or can we teach him some search and rescue commands?" "Well, remember, we don't know how long he's going to be here with us. But no matter what, don't get your hopes up too high, Ben. I can't say for sure that anything will help. This dog has been put through some pretty rough stuff. He's got some trust issues. It can't hurt to try, though, right?" Ben asked. "Not at all," Dad said. He grinned and tipped his head toward Hero, assuming the boss dog is okay with it. "How does that sound, Hero?" Hero gave a soft woof and began panting. It looked like there was a smile on his face. Ben hated that Scout was so anxious. He had to do something to help the puppy feel better. He crossed the lawn and squatted down next to the dogs. "Okay, Scout," Ben said, "we're going to learn a few moves. You ready?" Scout flopped over onto his back. Ben ran into the kitchen and grabbed some of Hero's treats from the bag on the counter. When Ben got back outside, both dogs caught the scent immediately and jumped up. "Come here, Scout." From his spot on the grass, Scout cocked his head and looked at Ben. His ears flopped a little. "Come here, boy," Ben repeated. He held out the treat and waved it in the air. Scout stood up and trotted toward Ben. Hero stayed put but watched Ben and Scout intently. "Attaboy," Ben said soothingly. "Good boy, Scout. Okay, now you need to learn to sit." "Sit," he said firmly, pushing down Scout's backside at the same time. "Sit," Ben repeated. Scout lay down on his tummy and wagged his tail. He let out a short yip. He rolled over onto his back and thrust all paws into the air. He barked again. He did everything but sit. Ben and his dad laughed. Hero hopped up and walked over to Scout. The bigger dog stood right next to Scout, looked up at Ben, and wagged his tail. Ben couldn't believe it. Hero was waiting for Ben to give him the sit command so he could demonstrate to Scout what he was supposed to do. Is Hero doing what I think he's doing, Dad? His dad nodded. He sure is. Apparently our hero is now a teacher. Okay, Scout, Ben said. Watch Hero. Hero sit. Hero sat, his front paws placed close together, his legs straight. He waited patiently for the treat which Ben held out on his palm. See, Scout? That's sitting. Scout watched, looking from Hero to Ben's palm and back again. Ben and Hero repeated the command a couple of times. Scout's whole body started to wiggle with anticipation. Your turn, Ben said to the puppy. Scout, sit. Scout barked. He bolted a few feet away and then zigzagged back. An energetic fluff ball. Scout flopped down onto the grass right next to Hero. Ben laughed. Okay, we're getting there, I guess. Let's try it again. Hero, sit. Hero sat. Scout, sit, Ben said. Scout sat. Hero barked excitedly. Attaboy, Scout, Ben called out, giving the puppy a treat. I've seen Hero take care of other animals before, Ben's dad said, but nothing like this. A few years back, we tracked a runaway teenager to an old farmhouse where there were a bunch of neglected horses and dogs and ducks. Well, the animal control guys were having some trouble rounding up all the animals, so Hero took it upon himself to help out. He herded this little brood of ducklings around the property, all the way around a pond, right up to the van like he'd been doing it his whole life. Ben's dad chuckled at the memory. Down at the station, they called him Cowboy for a month. Scout licked Hero's face. Hero closed his eyes and let the puppy snuffle and snort in his ear. Well, Scout may not be a duckling, Ben said, but Hero's pretty crazy about him. Well, seems that way, his dad said, heading for the back door. I set up a crate for Scout in the kitchen. Good night, Ben. Good night, Dad. Ben watched Hero and Scout for a few minutes. Hero lay down on the grass, his head resting on his front paws, and his eyes closed while Scout clambered up and over his back. Hero's fur twitched as Scout's nails tickled him, and Scout's tail wagged a mile a minute. It was like they had known each other forever, not for just a few hours. Ben hated to break up the fun, but it was getting late and still had homework to do. He took out another treat from his pocket and opened the door to the kitchen. Hero, come, he said. Hero hopped up, sending Scout rolling over onto the grass and trotted toward Ben. Scout whimpered and looked after Hero longingly. Scout, come, Ben said. Scout whined some more and buried his nose in the ground, snorting loudly. Hero walked back to Scout and nudged the puppy with his snout. Scout, come, Ben repeated. Reluctantly, Scout stood up and waddled over toward Ben. Ben placed the treat in Scout's crate. Scout stepped right inside and snatched it up. He didn't even flinch when Ben closed the door and latched it. Ben could tell Scout was comfortable being in a cage. He must have had one where he'd lived before, Ben figured, and it was probably the safest place he knew. Good night, Scout, Ben said, wiggling a finger through the metal bars. Scout lay down on the old towels Ben's mom had put in the crate, along with a water bottle. Come on, Hero, Ben said. Let's go upstairs. Hero slept at the foot of Ben's bed every night. But Hero had plopped down next to Scout's cage, and he was clearly settled in for the night. Ben shook his head in wonder. Look at you, Hero, he said, laughing. You're a goner for this pup. Fine. Good night, pal. He gave Hero one good scratch behind the ears and headed upstairs to his room. Ben collapsed onto his bed and yawned. It had gotten late, and he still had a couple of hours of homework. He pulled out his books. A handout with a long list of words stuck out from between two of them. Ugh. The vocabulary quiz in the morning. He'd forgotten all about it. He had more work than he'd realized. On top of the stack of homework was a dog training book that Ben had checked out of the library. It was written by a former police dog trainer. He'd wanted to learn more on how to give Heroes commands, but maybe it would come in handy for training Scout too. With a guilty glance at his textbooks and vocab list, Ben flipped it open. Just a few more minutes, he promised himself. I'll do my homework after. He read the introduction, which talked about something called positive reinforcement. Instead of focusing on punishing the dog, you're supposed to praise them whenever they did something good. Ben practiced some of the basic commands: come, stop, roll over. It was almost midnight. He reached for his math notebook and started on the first problem. He just had to solve for X, but Ben's eyelids were so heavy, his head too. He just needed some support from the pillow, just for a few minutes. All right, that concludes Chapter 4. That's it for Chapter 4. Make sure you complete your chapter book graphic organizer, and you can take a picture, snap it, You can scan it and send it to me that way, or you can just take a picture of it. That works as well, okay? All right, see you next time, guys. Bye.